Hello there, or as our Ewok counterparts say, Goopa. You're listening to Chosen Ones. I'm Goodnight Punk, and I'm joined as always by my good friend Wink. This episode we'll be going over Mandalorian, Chapter 3, The Sin. Wink, are you ready?
Aren't you a Blinky? How did that sound? Was it close? Kind of?
You know what's funny is there was like a half a second where I was like, what are you talking about? And it was literally, instantly I saw that door droid. So really, I honestly hope that's what you were going for.
That is exactly what I was going for. Of
Okay,
course.
all right.
Yes.
Because I would have felt real dumb if I attributed it to something wrong. That would have been hilarious.
Totally fair.
Ah.
Yes.
All right, so we're here to talk about Chapter 3
Heck
of
yeah.
The Mandalorian. What a freaking awesome
Hell
episode.
yeah. Very
It's-
exciting.
And before it even started, I saw the name of it, The Sin, and I'm like, what possible thing could the sin be alluding to? And it's a pretty big one. So we'll get into that and we'll talk about it, but we'll start at the beginning. So this episode starts exactly where the last one left off, and you've got the Mandalorian and Baby Gizmo in the cockpit of his ship, flying back to the planet where the client is, the one that commissioned him to go find Baby Gizmo. And so, relatively short scene, but kind of important.
Very
it is-
important.
Exactly, because this
Can't be understated.
sets the scene for a very important turning point in the episode.
Yes.
So, Baby Yoda hops out of his bassinet, as he likes to do, like a ninja. Nobody notices. So he's over here on Mandalorian's right. He's reaching up on the thruster throttle. He pulls off this little ball, just unscrews it, and he takes it. It's literally some of the cutest Baby Gizmo you've seen. But he takes the ball off,
Totally fair.
puts it in his mouth, and he's looking at the Mandalorian like, this is the tastiest thing I've ever had in my life. Mandalorian snatches it from it. That's not a toy, and then sets it down. Doesn't put it back on, but sets it down. This is the funny part, picks up Baby Gizmo by the back of his robe and just kind of sets him back in the bassinet, and that's where the scene ends.
Yes.
So
Very good stuff. Absolutely adorable. The playfulness, and that's kind of what 4-year-olds do. I mean, they're screwing with crap because, well, they're freaking bored,
they literally put everything in their mouth. Everything.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what it is. Hey, you know what? This is a dog toy. The dog's been slobbering on it the last 6 hours, but hey, now it goes in my mouth.
Yep. 50 years, it don't matter.
Yeah, thank God that dog mouths are so clean, or we're in trouble.
That's a weird tangent.
It's one of those weird facts. Anyways,
It's been a weird night over here as we discussed. Let's not go down this road.
yeah, we could keep going down these weird roads, but we won't. So it opens back up. He's parked his ship and he's walking through the shipyard with the bassinet following behind him like it always does. But he heads through there. Baby Yoda's ears are flapping in the breeze as other ships are falling down. He walks into the town through that giant archway, which kind of becomes a theme in this episode. But he drops through that archway, heads into the town, walking past a bunch of different crazy looking aliens. If in one point I thought I saw someone from the Apollo 11 space mission walking around, that little dude in the like full astronaut outfit.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. There were some cool aliens. I love when they just will pan around an area and just show all the different aliens that are there. Really cool.
One thing you mentioned kind of with that archway is, I mean, that is another kind of emblem that signifies something. It's the difference between two worlds. It's the difference between all this clutter and all this congestion and the unknown, because you can only see so much, you don't really know what's going on. And then on the other side is flat land, the ship, freedom, you can go wherever you want. Each side of that archway are two completely different worlds. And you can tell both the Mandalorian and Baby Gizmo, their attention, their mannerisms, all of that changes once they go through that archway.
Yeah, absolutely. Ears perk up on Yoda. God, I got to stop that. Baby Gizmo's ears perk up. He's looking around. He's looking at everything as if he's never seen it before, right?
Yeah.
And so they go straight to the Empire and to the client. And first off, did not see this coming. I didn't think he was going to take him back at all. But I guess it made sense.
I'll be honest. I kind of thought he was going to. I didn't think he was going to let him out of his sight, though. I expected him to return him because there was, as we discussed, in episode 1 with the Beskar, still, he wants that. I mean, that's the whole goal, is to get that. But there's been that connection that we've talked about, and I was kind of surprised when they took him away and the door shut. I was kind of taken aback. I was like, okay, that's not what I expected.
I guess what confused me about it was you just show back up there to collect your bounty after killing another bounty hunter. That's what confused me. But I guess they didn't know yet that IG-11 had been shot. But to me, it just seems like if you shoot another bounty hunter in the head and then you just carry on like nothing happened, something would be happening when you get back.
I see your point, but I think that's a little bit different, just for the fact that IG-11 was going to kill it, and the request was to bring it back alive.
Yeah, and they weren't in the same bounty hunter guild, were they?
Yes.
You said he was in the bondsman guild?
I remember they talked about guilds. I kind of think they're in the same guild, I'm pretty sure. But
well, that makes it more interesting to me then. It's crazy.
The Imperial officer that told him about everything and the reward and everything, he mentioned that there is a lesser reward for bringing it back dead. There is more of a reward for bringing it back alive. So, I mean, yeah, if you're cutting the pay in half to share with somebody and then also cutting it because the bounty's dead, I totally see why he would have killed the other bounty hunter, because he was trying to stop him. There wasn't anything. He really didn't have another choice.
Yeah, if he had waited another second, it would have been dead.
Yep.
So, but basically he gets in there. They're freaking stoked. Both of them said yes, I think about 30 times. I mean, I watched the show with captions on because you can kind of get a little bit more than what you're seeing with it.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
And,
I do the same thing.
So, but I remember reading yes about 15 times when they brought Baby Gizmo in there, because they're like, yes, 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 he's alive. Yes, yes. So they brought him in. They're both kind of excited that he's there and he's alive. The scientist comes up and puts a laser about an inch from his eyes and scans his face. Says he's totally healthy, so that's good. You know that force hold from chapter 2 did not take out his health.
Very good point.
And so he's good to go. And so basically what ends up happening, and this is funny because some people have pointed this out on our Discord. Yes, he gets a huge stack of Beskar steel for this bounty, but kind of a small detail that I did not realize until people pointed this out.
This was pretty big, actually.
Is that they pulled this thing out and set it down on the table, and it basically looked like an ice cream maker. Now, if you remember the dude from Cloud City back in the old trilogy, there was a dude. He has a name, Woodrow, something Woodrow.
I'm not sure.
Or Wood Milrow. I can't remember. There was a dude running around on Cloud City with something on, some kind of core on his shoulder that looked like an ice cream maker. And everyone always just thought it was so weird that this dude was carrying a core that looked like an ice cream maker. It was just this hilarious joke forever. But here it is again now, the ice cream maker. And this dude punches in a code and it pops open. So now the mystique of the ice cream maker from the old trilogy is now busted wide open. That thing is a container that holds things. So you're getting new information that regards the original trilogy, and I find it hilarious.
It's basically a safe.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
exactly
basically a safe / briefcase type thing, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of protected. I mean, it looks like it can go through some serious tumbles and being beat up, without opening. So it's that thing is no joke. Like, important stuff goes in there. So anytime you see one of these, keep that in mind.
And so he gets this massive, like, huge stack of Beskar compared to the one piece he got before he started. He's probably got 20 times that now. And so
okay, am I the only one who was a little underwhelmed at the amount of Beskar steel? I felt like it would be more, but then after thinking about like everything you got crafted with that one piece before,
with the one piece, yeah,
I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, this is gonna be like a lot of armor, but still just doesn't seem like a ton. But the stuff is super valuable, so I mean, I guess I can see it.
Yep, no doubt. One thing he does do that seemingly was out of character, and he was called on it by the client, but he basically asks, well, what are you going to do with it? To which the client responds basically, for someone of your capabilities, it's pretty much beneath you that you would ask that. I'm kind of surprised. And doesn't the Bounty Hunter Guild, that's against the rules of the Bounty Hunter Guild, basically.
Yeah.
But then he goes on to say something that I feel like has a lot of meaning, especially when we get in and talk about what happens after he gets the Beskar. But he says this, word for word: unfortunately, finding Mandalorians is harder than finding Beskar steel. And it almost seems like a threat, basically saying, there's none of you left. No one would miss you if you were gone. Quit asking questions that you don't need the answer to.
I kind of thought it was more of, if you want to keep doing business with us, fall in line. I mean, I guess it's still a threat, of course, but, Beskar's such a rare material, but they don't seem to have much trouble with it.
It definitely seemed a throwback to what we've already... Well, I don't know if we discussed it here yet, but we'll discuss it a little bit more in the next section here, but it almost seemed a throwback to what the Empire did to the Mandalorians and why they are so scarce at this point. Yeah. They're kind of like asserting power here. You know what? We're the ones that did this to you. Just remember that.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, so he takes this thing. The scientist and the bassinet go heading off behind a door. The door closes. Any thought I had of him saying, nope, screw this, was totally gone. He grabs the reward and he leaves, and I'm underwhelmed now. You just let him have him.
Yep.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, let's see what happens now. So he grabs the ice cream maker and he heads out the door. But they literally, just like with the first piece of Beskar he did, he beelines it to the hidden Mandalorian clan area. Basically, I didn't really get this out of the first episode, but you're getting it now, the way that things are going in this clan area.
Yes.
They're hiding there. It is not a known location where Mandalorians hang out. This is a hidden place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's probably hiding his way he gets there, making sure no one follows him, all that kind of stuff, because once he gets there, they're all there. And there was a comment during some of the dialogue that we're going to talk about here in a second where they say, this is why only one of us can go out at a time. And Mandalorian seems to be the one that's always gone. So a lot of them are hiding there a lot of the time. I'm sure if he's off planet, another one of them is going out, but they're not being seen a lot. So he takes the rewards to the Mandalorian clan. And as he's walking this case in, nobody really knows what's in the case, but they all know that he brought this youngling back, Baby Gizmo, and they all look kind of jealous and angry at him, right? As he's walking through their temple. They kind of start following him a little bit as he's walking. And then finally he gets into the main area where the blacksmith table, when he gets there, he hands it to the armorer and she opens it up. And so she starts counting all the Beskar, basically. But as she's doing that, she tells him, there's enough here to build a lot of armor. He tells her that his armor's been damaged. It's probably better that they start completely from scratch. And at that point, all those people that had kind of been following him, and you're kind of like wondering if they're jealous or mad or what, they all kind of get behind him, right? And so, I don't know. Did you get the feeling before anything else happened that they were mad at him?
Oh, I mean, it seems... definitely seems so. I wasn't sure at first if it was, just jealousy or anger, but definitely seemed to be a little bit of it. I didn't get any of that from the armor, though. And
that's true. I didn't either.
That was the thing I found really interesting. And as the way this scene plays out, it kind of seems like the armor has a lot of authority. I mean,
Oh, no doubt.
It's kind of one of those things. I mean, if you can build Mandalorian armor with this Beskar steel, which is such an important material, you have leverage. And, I don't know how much that factors into this or any of that, but I think that's probably an important part. And at first, it kind of seemed like curiosity and then maybe a little bit jealousy because the Mandalorian's about to get some badass new armor. And he mentions, of course, that he wants some to go to support the foundlings, which as they're doing this armor, we get that same flashback again, which we'll talk about in a second. But, I
think the main thing is that I didn't get any, they weren't going to praise him. They weren't going to congratulate him and say, hey, thanks for getting all this back for the Mandalorians. They didn't seem happy when he came walking in.
Yeah, it seems like while they're hiding out together, they're not really working together. It's
fight or flight, basically.
Yeah, kind of. But I think there's something else playing into this. And this is kind of expressed in the, when the Mandalorian in the heavy armor comes up and sees the Beskar steel with the Empire emblem on it. He gets very upset. They kind of get into a quick little scuffle, pull knives on each other, and that's when the armorer steps in and is like, that's not how we do things, and kind of puts everybody back in line, and kind of just straightens everybody out. But
important point in that whole scuffle is right when the heavy armored guy, the heavy armored Mandalorian, basically says, you're working with the people that took this Beskar from us and killed most of us in the Great Purge, which is exactly what the client was referring to earlier when he was seemingly making those threats or, just...
And that could have been the turning point. It could have been jealousy that turned into anger once they saw who he was working with.
Who he got it from, for sure. Well, the armor, like you said, she calmed everything down. And basically, she found a way. And there's a lot of cultures like this in the world where you can just bind people together with words, right? And so she goes on to talk about how, how can you be a coward when you are both the hunter and the prey? And he goes out and he does all this work to bring everything back for the Mandalorians while still being hunted and still being someone that is in the crosshairs. And basically he said, have you ever taken off your helmet? And he says, no. Has anyone ever taken off your helmet? And he said, never. And it's like, then how can you not be a Mandalorian? And so basically...
And that part's really important. It's I actually think that partially kind of confirms what we were theorizing in, the first episode about the foundlings and the Mandalorians. He may not actually be a Mandalorian. It's just the culture that he's in and raised in. Because I kind of think there's two meanings behind the helmet stuff. One, there is the idea of, being defeated in battle and how important that is. Mandalorians don't get defeated in battle. Like that's, they're absolutely badass fighters. And the fact that no one else has taken his helmet off means no one's kicked his ass to the ground and taken his helmet off. He hasn't been beaten. And he hasn't been stupid enough to take it off for some other reason, getting smacked in the head and having to take it off, or anything like that. But at the same time, he's got it on and he hasn't had to take it off to show everybody who he is or anything like that. He's following the culture. That's part of the point that she's making about not taking his helmet off. But one interesting thing that I thought about whenever they were doing the flashbacks, not to necessarily jump too far ahead, but kind of ties in with the foundlings and the fact if he's Mandalorian truly, or what is his heritage, where did he come from? The actor that is playing the child kind of looks like the kid that played Boba in episode 2. Did you kind of get that same impression?
They had similar looks for sure. I could tell the difference because I could still see Boba as a kid in my head, but they do have very similar, like they look very similar. Yeah, for sure.
Just similar appearance features, I guess.
Haircuts,
Yeah,
everything.
Exactly. Which I assume, that may be a sign that
maybe they're from the same planet. Let's pretend that Django and Mandalorian are both foundlings, and they could be from the same planet in the Mandalore system where they were found. So
yep,
that would explain looking similar.
I want to dig deeper into his flashback in a second, but first, I guess let's go back to the armory and everything that happens there.
Newest tweet for my wife, or newest text, way to end a text with my wife, comes up in this scene, by the way. Because anytime like my wife wants to argue with me now about, well, maybe we should do this, I will just use the Mando saying, which whenever they ended something about their culture, they say, "This is the way." And then everyone repeats, "This is the way." So anytime I text my wife saying, I am going to get beer at the grocery store before I come home, and then I'm going to end it with, "This is the way."
I like it.
Assume she'll repeat that back to me. But I don't think she will. She hasn't yet. Not. But I told her earlier when we watched this episode, I didn't get a confirmation that was going to happen. But we'll see.
Well, I'll cross my fingers for you.
Thank you.
I may try that as well. See how that goes.
We did get some insight into how signets are revealed.
Yes, this is a great point. Something that we've talked about already as having questions about.
Yeah. So in episode 1, we talked about, he said his signet had not been revealed yet. Well, apparently signets are revealed by great battles you have won. Because she said, the armorer asked him how his armor had been so damaged. And he said, by a mudhorn. And he's alive. So obviously she assumed that he defeated the mudhorn. So she said, I will give you the mudhorn signet for you on your armor when I build it. Which, interesting wording here, he denies the mudhorn signet. And he tells her because he did not defeat the mudhorn on his own. And here's where the wording comes in. He said he was helped by his enemy.
Yes.
His enemy being Baby Gizmo.
Very interesting. Yes.
So he's still trying to distance himself or disassociate himself with Baby Gizmo as just a job. He's still convinced on that point.
Well,
despite everything that happened.
Here's something else I'm curious about. He knows now that it was a Force user, and then he used the word enemy. Could that be something related to the fact that he is possibly of Jedi descent?
Here's something that confuses me. Agnolotti heard what happened in the last episode and didn't know how it could happen. The Force was not his first idea, or any idea that he mentioned.
That's actually
does Mando even know that he used the Force to do that? Is the Force a thing that everyone in the galaxy knows exists? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
This is fair. I mean, this is a long time after Order 66 happened. Jedi are a legend. if you haven't heard the stories of the Jedi being slain, you might not even know that the Force was a thing. So it's kind of, he might not even know about the Force. You know what I mean?
That's certainly possible.
So I don't know. One way or the other, he either knows or he doesn't. But it's interesting to think that, since there is no Jedi Order, no one's really using the Force out in the open because they're afraid to be killed or hunted.
Yeah.
He might not know what it is. So, another interesting thing said during this, all the reserves after he built a complete and full new armor set with this Beskar steel was that all the reserves he wanted to reserve for the foundlings, who the armorer calls the future of the Mandalorians, to which all of the Mandalorians reply, this is the way. The foundlings being the future of the Mandalorians, all of the Mandalorians agree that is the way. So I thought that was pretty cool. So then she goes on to smelt a full cuirass of armor for the Mandalorian. And then she mentions, after he says he does not want to use the Mudhorn signet, that she'll just use the extra to make whistling birds. To which I replied, what? What the hell is a whistling bird? We're going to get to that, but I don't know if you were as confused as I when she said that. Because I thought that was his new signet. I'm like, whistling birds? That sounds terrible. Go back to the Mudhorn.
I thought that is what she made his signet as. And there was something about the elegance of it or something. The thing that I found most interesting about this whole signet conversation was what we had talked about previously, in the fact that she'd asked previously, have you revealed your signet?
Mm-hmm.
And he said no. What does that mean? Has he revealed it? Is she asking, like, have you taken down, like, your first creature? Or, like, have you figured out who you are? What is she actually asking? Because now that we're getting a little bit more information about the signet, and that it is, seems to be personal per Mandalorian, not necessarily the Mandalorians themselves. It's not like their faction, or, it's not a faction emblem or anything. It was more about him finding himself,
Yeah, I'm not sure. You know what the whistling birds are now, though, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. For a second there, I was curious. I wasn't sure. All right. So another flashback happens. So after she tells him what she's going to do, she starts smelting his cuirass and his whistling birds. And while she's doing that, every time she bangs her hammer against that steel or pulls down the smelter onto the Beskar, you keep seeing these flashbacks to him on whatever planet he's from, where the separatists or the separatists and the Empire are going. It must be the separatists, because the Empire wasn't there at that point.
Well, there was
separatists. Well, it might have been, because
B2 battle droid
after Order 66, I'm sure that the clones and the separatist droid army were working together to exterminate everything else left. But the flashback's happening, and you see him with his mom and dad again, but you get more of the flashback. And I feel like he's either they're going to smelt more and he'll have more flashbacks, or something is going to trigger more flashbacks because of where this ends.
Yes.
But his parents are running away from the battle. They're all trying to get away, holding him in their arms, and finally they get to this like cellar door that was just kind of like a hideout, and they put him in it. And interestingly enough, they put him in it, and instead of climbing in with him, they close the doors on him in there by himself. And almost instantly when those doors close, you hear this loud bang, the doors bounce, and then you're like, okay, something just happened to his parents. But then the doors open. But as they open, there's a B2 super battle droid standing right there and ends up aiming his cannon right at Mando. And that's where the flashback ends.
So this is separatist. This has to be pre-Empire. for a B2 super battle droid to be there attacking. And this kind of gets me thinking about this whole youngling thing. I mean, what? So Boba was a clone of Jango.
Mm-hmm.
And
You're talking about foundling, not youngling.
Correct.
Okay.
And so all these clones that they cloned off Jango. What if
I want to throw something out here for you because I know you haven't seen Clone Wars cartoon.
Correct. I have not yet.
Clone Wars cartoon has a lot of episodes with, 8, 9, 10-year-old Boba. So there are episodes in Clone Wars where you see what's going on with Boba.
Okay.
And he is not he's not at that point wearing Mandalorian armor. As far as I can remember.
So I'm kind of wondering if the foundlings are related to that. Are they clones who were maybe not sent off as regular clones? So the foundlings are, I'm kind of wondering if they are clones that are then maybe sent out to cities and as they're being raised, and then while the separatists are attacking, because we now know who attacked them, the Mandalorians are coming through and finding those who have survived, and those are the foundlings. Maybe it's a war that is still going on. When they talk about supporting the foundlings, is that armor going to give Mandalorians armor so they can go, even after all this long, go defeat, these super battle droids that are trying to take these young Mandalorian children? I think there's a lot of questions here, but one thing that I am really interested to see, that there might be a little bit of a connection here, is that perhaps Baby Gizmo could be a clone. We're thinking that's on the table as a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
They could have that connection as well. As far as him being a clone of Jango.
Interesting.
I don't know what there is as far as his age. I'm getting the impression he's not old enough to have been cloned then. But, when you're cloning something like that, it's not like you have to clone them all right then. You can keep cloning them over time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, that's how we got to stormtroopers, is from clone troopers.
Yep. Most of the army was converted clone troopers. I'm sure they added more into their ranks as time went on because they didn't have the clones anymore, but.
And that was something that the First Order quit doing, as they've mentioned they kind of started go into finding orphan children and such to fill their army. So this, he could totally be a clone that was maybe snuck out and saved or something along those lines. And that's what they're referring to as foundlings. I think we're going to find out before too long because, they keep referring to that way too much for it to not be super important.
I have an interesting thought that I thought of while you were talking about foundlings. When we think of lings at the end of a name, we kind of think of younglings from the prequels, right? The younglings were the young Jedi that were being trained. So we always think, yeah, and slaughtered. Thanks, Anakin. But we think young, right? But does does ling literally mean young? Is there an age restricting on a foundling?
That's a wonderful question. I have no idea.
Because foundlings could also be the Mandalorians that have been scattered across the galaxy after the Great Purge as well, right? So if you're finding these guys that are living in the that are Mandalorians that have moved away from that because of the Great Purge, they could be finding their people and bringing them back into their culture, right?
So a foundling, by definition, is literally an infant that has been abandoned by its parents and is discovered and cared for by others.
Okay, well, Mando didn't look like an infant to me, so
Yes, but still, a young child.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess that does put a little bit of an age on it, so that would kibosh that. But yeah, it is. We're gonna find out. That's the main thing here. So.
Yep.
So anything else to say on that before we keep going?
No.
Sounded like you had a thought there.
No, I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about with the flashback and all that good stuff.
All right, so he walks out of the armorer, out of the Mandalorian clan area, seemingly good with the Mandalorian clan now, after they all kind of talked it out about what the Mandalorian way was and how...
Actually, pause real quick. One thing that I want to clarify, because I was kind of confused about this, and they're starting to make it more clear. You have the Mandalorian clan, and the guild is referring to the Bounty Hunters Guild.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these two different factions that the Mandalorian is, in fact, a part of. But just for clarification, clan, Mandalorian clan, and guild is the Bounty Hunter Guild.
Absolutely. So he's leaving his clan and heading back to Grief Karga in the cantina, the leader of the guild, the Bounty Hunter Guild, to get his next job. So he shows up and Grief is sitting there, and Grief basically tells him that, hey, everybody hates you here. You know? Oh, you know what? Flashback. We didn't mention this when he met the client again. And this is important. He asked the client, how many fobs did you give out?
Yes.
And he said, I gave out as many fobs as I needed to ensure that I got the bounty.
It was an important bounty.
Yes, it's an important bounty. I gave out as many fobs as I needed to. So coming back to Grief Karga, he goes up to Grief. He sits down. And he says, one of the first things he says to Grief is, how many fobs did you give up? This is after Grief told him everyone in there hated him because he just got the biggest bounty that the guild has ever seen. And so when Mandalore asks him that question, he answers with, oh, well, everybody in here has a fob for that bounty. So basically, at any point, at any time, anyone could have come after him to take his bounty and kill him and take it from him. Which is kind of a dick move. That's all I'm saying.
That would be a very dick move. Yes.
So yeah, that's important thing there going forward. But he basically tells Grief he wants a new job, and Grief says, "Why would you want a new job? You just got the best one in the world. You got all this money. I mean, even I have money because you finished this job." And Grief pulls out a couple bars of Beskar out of his breast pocket, shows them to the Mandalorian, and then puts them back, right? Mm-hmm. So now we know Grief has 2 bars of what the Mandalorians was stolen from the Mandalorians and that what he wants.
Yeah.
So now we know that Grief has that. But Grief ends up giving him a new bounty puck. Basically the Mandalore's like, I want to go as far away from here as possible. So he gets this thing for the ocean dunes of Karnak, wherever the hell that is. I didn't have time to look up that planet on Wikipedia before the episode, but I'm guessing it's on the opposite side of the Outer Rim as where they are, because he's just going to go off and find a nobleman's son that skipped bail, and he's happy with that. Give me a new job. I'm not taking any time off. I'm just done with this current bounty. I want to move on. And
did you notice what species that bounty was?
Mon calamari.
That is correct and delicious. Oh, that's just calamari. But yes, Mon calamari. So that's kind of interesting.
The reason I wanted to look up Karnak is because I was curious if it's the planet from the Clone Wars cartoon where the Mon calamari live. I don't remember off the top of my head, but the name sounds familiar for some reason.
Yes, it very well could be. Ocean Dunes. That sounds like a place where something called a calamari would live, so safe assumption.
Exactly.
We'll go
so, with that. Yeah. I just typed it into Wikipedia, so I'll look here in a second. It actually isn't coming up with any Karnak is not coming up on Wikipedia, so it must be a new place. But anyways, he takes this bounty puck for this nobleman's son, the Skip Bale, to the ocean dunes of Karnak to get the hell out of whatever planet they are on and just to get away from everything that's happened. So he goes to leave the planet, walks out that giant, archway that we talked about earlier, out into the flat desert of this planet where all the ships are parked, gets in his ship, sits down in his chair, and basically he starts flipping knobs. He's like, all right, let's start all the pre-flight checklist. Well, let's get all these knobs switched. Flips on engine right, flips on engine left. He's looking at it. All right. He's getting ready to fly off the planet, and he goes to grab his thruster throttle, and it's just a bar. A bar with, threads at the top. The ball's missing. Where'd the ball go? Oh, that's right. Baby Gizmo had been playing with it earlier.
This is such a good scene.
I love this part. It was so good. So he picks up the ball and he screws it back onto his throttle. But once he finally gets it back on there, he stares at it, right, for a few seconds. And you're just like, I think I know what he's thinking. I think I know what's about to happen. Please let what I think is going to happen, right?
Yes, 100%. And you know it's going to. It has to.
It has to happen, right?
Yes.
It has to. So he grabs that throttle and pulls it down. Well, it's funny. They gave you a little bit extra to make you think it wasn't going to happen because once he screwed it on, he pushed that throttle forward.
Yep.
He's like, all right, I'm ready to go.
He did his best too, but
he did it. He was fighting himself all the way.
Couldn't do it.
The episode was called The Sin, and you're seeing it, the beginning of that sin
100%.
right now. So he grabs that throttle, he pulls it down, he starts flipping his switches off. The ship is now dead, totally turned off, and you're like, oh crap, here we go. So he gets out of the ship and goes straight back for that Empire post. So he gets there, he's looking around, he's like, what's going on here? Trying to get the lay of the land. He walks over and he finds a space dumpster because apparently they all throw their trash out. In a galaxy far, far away, they invented dumpsters. We still use them today. And so he found a dumpster, and inside of that dumpster, he found something that just continued the thought of he's like, this is not going to happen to Baby Gizmo.
Yep. He finds his little bassinet in there just kind of chilling out. And, he kind of has that self-reflection moment where he realizes it's game time.
He's like, okay, you're going to throw that out? That's kind of important. If you want to walk anywhere, that's like the easiest way to do it. Yeah. So obviously they're not thinking about walking anywhere with Gizmo. All right. That's a bad plan.
That means he's locked somewhere or something along those lines.
He's not in a place that he is familiar with and happy with.
Yep.
So Mandalore gets up on the roof, right? Hits a button on his helmet, which apparently is long-range scanning, can hear things. And he takes his awesome stun blaster rifle and he looks through it, which apparently has a thermal sight on it.
Yes. So
he's looking around the building, aims the thermal sight at two bodies, and he starts hearing through a lot of static the client and the scientist talking to each other. Basically, the client is saying, why is it still alive? Do what you got to do, whether it lives or dies, to extract and here comes more wording, to extract the materials from it. What are the materials they're trying to extract from Baby Gizmo?
I think we know.
I think that you were onto something with the midichlorians thing, because what else could it be, right?
I can't think of anything else. I mean, so as much as people hate midichlorians, I know. It is Star Wars canon. You have to deal with it. So we're going to talk about it. And they're a living creature inside your cells, right? So, I mean, I think extracting it from another creature is, that's probably the way you would try to get them out.
And it sounds very painstaking, by the way.
Yes, that is an
something
understatement.
From my straight up DNA and blood.
Yep.
That does not sound like a good thing to me.
So perhaps that's what the scientist fella is doing, is trying to pull the midichlorians out so that they can possibly try to clone those. Because if you could clone midichlorians,
that has huge implications.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you could rebuild the emperor, basically. I mean, you could kind of do whatever you wanted. So, very important if that's what they're trying to extract.
I would like to make a statement.
Okay.
I like the scientist. I think the scientist is cool.
Why?
At every turn and every point, he is trying to keep Baby Gizmo alive.
100% true.
Now, maybe his methods or what he's trying to do is not the purest of heart, but I don't think that he wants to hurt Baby Gizmo. And like scientists do, they want to learn from him.
Yes.
Without hurting him.
I agree.
The client doesn't give a crap. He just cares about getting the job done. I like the scientist because while he's looking through his heat signature and he is listening into with his helmet, the scientist is saying, we need to keep him alive. That the only important thing is keeping Baby Gizmo alive, to which the client replies, well, you need to make it quick because I can no longer guarantee your safety. So which to me
really
means
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Because to me that means they are not on the same side.
No.
One has hired the other or is working with the other because of a higher power, and they are stuck together. And one doesn't like the other one.
What is the threat that he's actually making? You know, as far as not being able to keep you safe
anymore? Yeah. What are they talking about? Are they the Mandalorians coming back? Because I doubt they have any inkling.
I'm sure that's not what they're talking about.
Yeah,
it kind of seems like they're talking about whoever the client's boss is that wants whatever Baby Gizmo has that needs to be extracted is losing their patience. And it's like, okay, scientist, if you can't figure this out, I'll go find different scientists who can. And I think that's the concern primarily for this guy at this point.
Yeah. We'll talk a bit more when we get to this part here in a few seconds about the scientist and another reason why I think he's okay. But basically from here what happens is, and I cannot understand the first move that the Mandalorian makes. Try to explain it to me. It makes no sense. Mandalorian goes to the front door. He knocks on it. That little droid comes out and says, what? What did you say at the beginning of the episode? Something chunky? Hunka-lunky chunky? I don't remember.
Aren't you a Blinky?
Yeah, so that thing pops out and says that. And he grabs its head and rips it off. And then he goes running around the side of the building. So the stormtroopers open the door and come out saying, let's check the perimeter. All right, well, now they know something's going on. So then the Mandalorian goes over to the side of the building and he puts this charge on the wall and hides behind the wall and blows up the side of the building. Now, before I go any further with what's going to happen after this, I want to know, why did he rip the head off of that droid and let them know that something was going on? Why didn't he just blow up the wall and just go in?
I feel like the answer to this question is fairly easy. I'm assuming where he went in is probably a place that would generally be fairly heavily guarded. Probably going to be more stormtroopers there. They're probably going to be closer to listening range to be able to get there quicker.
How would he know
Whereas
that?
you go knock on the front, he's been in the building. It's not like he's not familiar with the building. He's been in the front door. He knows where it leads. He knows the room that it goes into. So if you can draw them out of there, then blow a hole through the back door, then you can go in and you should have a lot less resistance, or at least thinner walls of resistance to be able to get through.
More spread out enemies.
Exactly. Yes.
All right. I will accept your answer.
Makes sense.
I will accept that answer, though I was confused at first as to why you would even do that part of the plan. But anyways, he does do it. He blows a hole in the wall, and then he heads into the building. And we're not going to go over everything that happens while he gets in the building, but I will
It's all
say
great
this.
though. It's awesome.
Beautiful fight scenes, great strategery by the Mandalorian. And I literally in the second watch through wrote down everything he did. He killed 15 stormtroopers.
Okay.
Getting
Important question.
Baby Yoda bad. Baby Gizmo, sorry.
You've seen Zombieland, right?
I have seen Zombieland.
Okay. So they have Zombie Kill of the Week. Stormtrooper Kill of the Week was... What's your answer?
My favorite was the grappled knife, but
100%. That was mine too. That was awesome.
dude,
I absolutely loved it.
So he killed 15 stormtroopers by himself.
Yeah,
in this
he went total
siege
ham.
of the Empire Post, right? 15 kills, 5 blaster kills. 3 of them he killed by taking their own rifles and killing them with them. He had a grapple and a knife kill, a shock end of his rifle kill, 1 fire cannon, just basically burned a stormtrooper alive. And then we get to the last 4 kills, which were whistling birds. We saw what whistling birds were. He was surrounded. He put down his gun. He put down Baby Gizmo, and he just kind of opened up his wrist for the whistling birds, shot a few of them out, and it killed 4 stormtroopers without him doing anything.
Yep, that was pretty cool. That was very Iron Man-esque.
Right?
With Jon Favreau doing this, I can't say I'm terribly surprised because that's exactly what happens.
We got a little bit of... Mando's got a little bit of Iron Man in him. Let's be honest.
He does. I mean, they seem like pretty similar characters. I mean, there's not that much difference between Iron Man and the Mandalorian. I mean, it's... Right?
Nah, well, as far as metalized characters go.
Yes. Similar
They
look.
are very similar fight styles, for sure.
They have ways of going through the air that we'll discuss later. Yes, very, very cool stuff. So,
in the middle of all of that, though, 15 kills, but in the middle of that, he finds the room where Baby Gizmo is. Baby Gizmo is underneath like this, it looks like a CAT scan machine. He's kind of underneath it, being scanned. But in the same room, there's a probe, not a probe droid, but one of those medical droids, as well as the scientist.
Mm-hmm.
He pulls out his gun, and the scientist is begging for his life. He pulls out the gun, aims at the scientist, but then quickly shoots the medical droid, which had all the needles and everything that was kind of starting to come towards him. Kills it. And basically, this is what part of what makes me like the scientist. He doesn't know what Mando's doing there. He might think he's trying to kill him because of what he says. He says, what did he... Oh, God, I wish I had written down what he said. Basically, what he's pleading for is not to hurt Baby Gizmo. The first few lines he says to Mandalorian is, please don't hurt it, it's just a child. Please don't... That's what it was. He's like, it's just a child. Don't hurt it, basically. To which he replies while looking at it, what did you do to it? And then he tells him not enough information for us to know what he did to it, but basically tells him, I'm the reason it's alive. Without me, they would have killed it. Please, spare my life, whatever. Well, we don't know for sure that he spared the scientist's life, but he left the room and we never saw him kill the scientist.
That is true.
Side note.
Yep.
Very, very, very clearly, you see the Camino patch on his shoulder in this episode. There's little to no doubt that he has that pouch, the same one that all the clones wear. Makes
you wonder. I mean, with him caring so much about Baby Gizmo, is he the one that made him? Like, did they get some DNA from Grandmaster Yoda and have it saved and do an experiment and build this baby, and then this scientist's job is to just make sure that this thing keeps going? Because this would be a long ass project. I mean,
and if he did,
a couple hundred years to get it to maturity. I mean, it's crazy.
And if he did, how did he lose it?
Yes.
you know?
Yep.
So he leaves the scientists, and after he gets those last few kills getting out of the building, he should be good now, right? Well, as he's leaving the Empire building, there's a scene in the cantina, right? Well, earlier Grief had said that all of the bounty hunters got a fob. Well, they're all sitting in the cantina.
He wasn't
guess
exaggerating.
What's that?
He wasn't exaggerating.
He was not kidding, because every single fob in that cantina starts going off.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for them to realize what was happening, because as Mando's making his way through the streets towards his ship, you start seeing all these bounty hunters start following behind him, right? Kind of like swooping on him like seagulls do at the beach if you have a sandwich. They're just kind of there. You don't really worry about them. They're not really threatening you at the moment. But he gets to a point where now he's surrounded. He's at the archway, and Grief is standing in the archway, basically stopping his progression.
100%. And that's kind of what we're talking about with Arch before. It's the difference of being trapped and the confusion and the cluster and freedom. It's that Arch again that is the difference between freedom and being hell, stuck. Basically. Yeah.
So you're basically, Grief says, Mando, I didn't think we'd ever be here. You broke the code, but I'm your only hope, and I want to help you. He basically tells the Mando to drop the baby so that they can work something out, because if he doesn't do that, all those bounty hunters surrounding him are going to end him.
Yep.
And of course, in what we've now 3 episodes in come to expect from Mando, he does not want to be told what to do.
That's very fair. Yes.
Not by unless it's his Mandalorian clan. Unless it's them, I think he'd listen to them. But anybody else, you're not going to tell the Mandalorian what to do.
Nope, not going to happen.
So Grief tells him to put Baby Gizmo on a speeder. He walks over to that speeder, and he's looking into the eyes of, or not even. Sorry, he's not even looking into the eyes of Baby Gizmo, because Baby Gizmo is still asleep from whatever was happening to him in the room with the scientist. But Mando looks down at him, and he starts to set him down, but as he sets him down, grabs his gun in classic like Western fashion, quick draws, and starts shooting other bounty hunters, and jumps into the speeder with Baby Gizmo. And then the next fight ensues. So now you got all these bounty hunters trying to come in on him on the speeder. So basically he points a gun at the droid in front of it to make it drive, and it starts driving, trying to head towards that arch, head towards freedom. But Grief shoots the droid and stops the progression. They keep going. They're fighting. And I did more math. I did more math.
This whole fight. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Give me your math.
This is all the way to the end with as much math as I could do and keep count, and while still being in awe of the awesomeness of what's happening. He killed at least 9 other bounty hunters in multiple different ways.
That is a lot of bounty hunters.
So if you're keeping track at home, that is 24 people in the last 10 minutes that he's killed.
Woo. Bringing those numbers up.
Yeah, crazy. But you had something to say to the to all of that.
So the thing I really liked about this scene is all the firefighting. It didn't really seem overly far-fetched a little bit. But again, one thing that I really like about the show is it does a pretty good job at following all the action, allowing you to see what's happening, who's shooting who's shooting where, kind of what's going on. And you have Mando kind of hiding in this, this car, and he's kind of attacking out from it. It's just a lot of really, really good action.
I can't find my notebook where I wrote this down in. I don't know where I put it, but at one point he gets down in the sniper position and he starts disintegrating bounty hunters. Not even just killing them. He's now using his disintegration bullets and blowing bounty hunters up. Like he's gone full tilt. He's like, I'm gonna get out of this. I'm not dying here today. He's shooting everything that's in his way.
Yep.
So, I mean, total craziness here. But he gets to the point where he's run out of bullets. People are still continuing to come in on him. He uses this flame cannon out of his wrist. He's using that, pushing people back, but that ends up running out of gas. And basically something happens there. They're all still coming in on this transport that is not going to move. But something crazy happens, something important, I feel like.
Huge.
He looks down. He's kind of laying over Baby Gizmo. And he looks down at Baby Gizmo and just kind of like in a reflection moment of like, what have I got myself into? And Baby Gizmo looks up at him as his eyes open. And if that's not enough for you, there's not a lot of emotion you can get out of a helmet, right? But if you watch on the outer edges of Gizmo's head and of the frame as he's staring at Gizmo, you can see the Mandalorian's hand rubbing his head. Kind of like just lovingly staring down into his old bounty or / enemy's eyes as he knows he's about to be got. Like there's a moment between Baby Gizmo and Mandalorian right there.
And I mean it's kind of one of those moments where he's kind of wondering what he needs to do. He's kind of already made his decision, but I think this is kind of the moment where he knows what he's fighting for, and
absolutely
it's kind of important.
Huge moment, I feel like, for him and Gizmo there.
Yes.
But this is the part that blew my mind in the episode because I didn't know what was coming. And when it happened, it made total sense. But it was so good. So out of literally nowhere, out of left field, I did not see this coming. The Mandalorians left the covert. They were not hiding anymore. And then not only did they come in fighting to defend the Mandalorian, they did it on freaking jetpacks.
Yes.
They came flying in from the sky, shooting everything in their path, dropping between the bounty hunters and the Mandalorian, shooting everything that shot at them. And the Mandalorian jumps out of the transport with Baby Gizmo. And then suddenly, here comes heavy armor Mandalorian guy that was fighting with Mandalorian earlier. Like literally fighting with knives for their lives.
Yep.
And he says, Mandalorian looks at him and says, we're going to have to relocate the covert. Meaning all the Mandalorians are going to have to move. And this goes back to the wording that I thought was so awesome with these guys. He didn't even look at him, I don't think, or he might have, but all he said to him was, this is the way. Right?
Yep.
So he's like, okay, that's when Mandalorian grabbed Baby Gizmo and he made his way to the ship. The Mandalorians kept fighting off the bounty hunters as the Mandalorian made his way to his ship. Now, in all of this, Grief kind of disappeared and you didn't know where he went to. But you knew he was at the arch, so you knew something was going to happen.
Yes.
So Mandalorian gets in.
Well,
before
ahead. We get there, the thing with the Mandalorians and the fact that they've kind of outed themselves at this point, I've kind of had some questions about, like, he is the Mandalorian, but like, what is his culture like? How important is that? because he's kind of gone off the path of, the bounty hunter guild. So there's been some times to kind of question where his loyalty may lie.
Or how committed he was to his causes.
Yes. And then we have the fight scene earlier with the heavy Mando. But, I mean, this is, like he says, this is the way. This is what they do. They have each other's backs, and it doesn't particularly matter. They're not going to let one of their own, even if it's one of their own that they don't particularly like, or one of them doesn't like. This is the way they do business, and I think that's really important.
Super awesome
to know about the Mandalorian culture and the way they handle things.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. So yeah, basically they've freed him. While he was in, he had another last stand coming, and it wasn't even a stand. He was dead in the water. They were coming for him, and the Mandalorians sprung him out. Yep. And so he makes his way to his ship. He gets in there. You think he's home free, but popping out of one of the sections of the ship is now Grief.
He came climbing down. It was like he was up in maybe, like a storage compartment or something. And if you're paying attention, it's hard to see him at first, but you see something barely start moving, and then you actually see him. You tell it's a person for sure, no doubt. And
yeah, so he pops down, and he's got the Mandalorian dead to rights while he holds Baby Gizmo in his arms. And Mandalorian, man, full of tricks. He has all the cool toys, right? Because to get out of the sure shot from Grief, he slaps his wrist, shoots his what do you call it? Grappling hook. The grappling hook shoots off to a panel that starts shooting down smoke, and he just kind of hides in the smoke while Grief shoots 3 or 4, maybe 2 to 3 shots out into the dark before Mandalorian turns around and shoots him dead in the chest. In the chest. He goes popping out of the ship, and the door closes.
Wasn't the stuff that he started shooting off carbonite?
Oh, it might have been
right next to.
Yeah, it might have been right next to the carbonite
transport.
I didn't even think of that. It could have been the carbonite shooting out. That's
so. I think he was trying to freeze him, but he didn't come in close enough, so he was able to take a shot and knocked him out of the ship. But I think he was actually trying to freeze him.
Dang, man, that's interesting. I like that. Missed it. But it gave him enough to be able to shoot Grief, who popped out of the ship, closed the door, and then Mando takes off. You get a quick cutscene, though. We talked about it earlier. Beskar, Grief had got some Beskar, and he had put it in his breast pocket. Well, guess what?
2 pieces.
Right where Mandalorian shot.
Saved his
life. The Beskar saved the shot. Nope. Bounced off the Beskar, did not kill Grief.
Probably still hurt like hell. Kind of like Kevlar. But better.
I have a feeling we're not going to see, that was not the end we're going to see of Grief. There's a reason they kept him alive, because if they didn't, there's a reason they kept him alive. If they didn't need him for later, he probably would be dead.
And he's the guy that handles, all the bounties and stuff for the guild. So I'm willing to bet there's about to be a puck with Mandalorian's head on it.
And that brings up a really good question for me. Fobs. If you're going to put a bounty out on the Mandalorian, these fobs have always been a question for me, right? How do these fobs work? How do they know where people are at all times? Is there a tracking number on every single person in the galaxy? Like, how do they know where these people are? Like, how do they know where Baby Gizmo was? How do they know where that blue-fished guild guy in the first episode was? Like, well, are they going to know where the Mandalorian is at all times?
No, I think this is more of some sort of system like a microchip, perhaps. Because, it's a pretty safe assumption that Baby Gizmo was, in fact, being held by the scientists before. Probably put a tracking device in it, kind of like what they do with, like, hospital patients sometimes or something like that, where there's like a tracking device so they can figure out if they leave the perimeter or something along those lines.
Just an interesting thought. Because
And I think that's why
I gotta
most
think
have pucks and not trackers.
Not track, or pucks and not fobs. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, once he's now in the air, the Mandalorian is flying and he is getting away. He has sprung Baby Gizmo, saved his life in most likeliness. So as he's flying away, leaving the atmosphere of the planet, something cool happens. Right next to him, the heavily armored Mandalorian comes flying up with his jetpack next to the cockpit and basically salutes the Mandalorian.
I'll be honest, I thought that part was a
off.
little cheesy.
I won't lie to you. I'm with you for that part.
That was the one thing that was just a little cheesy.
Well, it's like he's got to have gotten far with the ship at that point, but he caught up with the jetpack to be like, all right, dude, we got you. That part was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But it did lead to a kind of funny moment because we just watched the Mandalorian kill 24 at the least people in various different ways with many, many different toys.
Yeah.
But his comment is, I got to get one of those, talking about the jetpacks.
Yep. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you.
I thought that was hilarious.
I have to say, as cool as Mandalorian jetpacks were, I think my favorite scene is the final scene.
Yes, it was. It kind of ended the episode perfectly for the progression of the relationship between Baby Gizmo and Mandalorian.
100%.
Because Mandalorian literally has his hand on his thruster throttle, unscrews the ball off the top of it, and then he holds his hand in the air, and you see Baby Gizmo's hand go up, and he drops the ball into Gizmo's hand, and Gizmo just kind of walks off with it.
Yep. It's super cute, and he's just roaming around on the ship now. He doesn't have a cradle anymore, and he's just doing his own thing.
He's just all over the place, doing whatever he wants, things that the Mandalorian in the beginning of the episode were saying, hey, that's not a toy. He's giving it to him to play with.
Yep.
It's just, I love these two. These two together is my favorite thing in this whole show.
All right, so let's come down to the final question. How would you rate episode 3, The Sin?
All right, episode 3, The Sin. I gave episode 1 a 10 because it met and exceeded all of my expectations. I thought it was amazing. So I will say that was a 10 for sure. I gave episode 2 a 7. So we got a little bit of room to work here. I thought this episode was better than episode 2 by the long measure.
I agree.
I'm going to give this episode an 8.5.
Okay.
I'm going to say I'm not going to give out 10s anymore. So we're getting back to a realistic spectrum here, but I'm going to say 8.5 because not only did he fight off the Empire in an awesome fight scene, he then went on to fight off his own bounty hunter guild. And then on top of that, the Mandos came in and fought with him. 2 awesome fight scenes in this show. Not to mention all the character development between him and Baby Yoda.
Yep. I totally agree. I'm going to go with a slightly different ranking. I'm going to go like a 9.1. I think it's slightly better than 9, but it's definitely not a 10. I thought the development of the characters was really good. Like you said, their relationship, the Mandalorian, you see kind of a lot of evolution in his decision making in this episode. And then, of course, just the fight scenes were really good. The kills were awesome. The grapple kill was fantastic. A lot of action. You get to see Mandalorians use their jetpacks. I mean, what is there not to like about this episode? It was great. 9.1 for me. And I am anxiously awaiting next Friday, in which we get to watch episode 4.
I agree, and I can't wait to talk about it. So if you have any final thoughts about this episode.
I don't.
All I can say is it left me wanting more, and I cannot wait for
Agreed.
next week's episode where we get to recap what I assume will be another amazing episode.
That is my assumption as well.
So until then, we thank you all for coming. We appreciate you listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Make sure you guys subscribe. This is the way.
We have spoken.